one thing I see different modalities of exercise, and I don't take this at all. Like I love yoga. Yoga is awesome. But any modality done to an extreme, even weightlifting, can become detrimental, or you're going past the point of beneficial.
Mhm.
And like I said, I'm going to step on everyone's toes here. Weightlifting, running, yoga, everything done past a certain point can become bad. It becomes an unhealthy pursuit. And just real quick, one thing I've seen with core reflexive strength are people that do tons of yoga. When they try to do something like lift heavy weights or go to produce a lot of power, they've elongated and stretched things out to a point where I have a hard time working with these people. Like if somebody comes to me and they've done a ton of yoga, that's just their main modality of exercise for years and years and years. They've elongated and stretched and extended a whole ton. I find they have a really hard time to find a good abdominal brace.
Yeah.
And that's just like saying anything can go bad on you. I mean, weightlifting, like you said, if you're doing weightlifting and you're doing it properly, or you're doing too much of it, if you're not recovering, or you're not kind of keeping things in check, I guess it would be where I'm getting at, is like, not letting something get away from you. And that would be the beauty of something like an FMS or even just a regular screen that, especially when you start an exercise routine of, like, let's say I'm going to do yoga. Great. I'm going to do yoga every single day for the next year. Well, what has that done to my body over time? If it's benefited you, great. That's awesome. I mean, yoga, there's some miracles out there for yoga. I'm not trying to step on their toes and say weightlifting's better or anything like that. I'm just saying anything can get away from you to an extent,
Yeah.
to where you think you're doing all this balance work, you think you're doing all this stretching, elongating, but you're actually like turning things off because, I had somebody in the gym, I think it was sometime last year, and I was trying to teach them how to deadlift. This person was a yoga instructor, and she just could not find her core. And she complained about back pain. She was doing some things outside, like doing some yard work and stuff, and she said her back just hurt really, really bad. And what I saw was just the spine just was taking all of it. The back erectors were doing everything for her. That core was elongated and stretched out because she couldn't even find a good core brace, and I could tell. And just for everyday life, you want to be able to like move stuff and do yard work. I mean, like that's a point of where you get a diminished return, and that'd be the same thing with weightlifting. If you're lifting heavy all the time, and and you can't do everyday activities, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like now if you're a power lifter or competing, that's a whole different thing. If you're a competitor, that's a whole. But if you're just an average person, and your exercise routine starts to transform your body to not a functional point, I think you need to bring it back. And that would be something, a case for a SFMA if you're in pain, or an FMS, or even looking at a different type of screen. Basically, just checking in, making sure this new exercise modality is not taking my body to a point where I don't want it to.
Yeah. And that's a perfect transition point into what we were going to talk about next anyways. And that's shifting between mobility and heavy lifting. Look, if you're at home and you're going after that traditional style of let me do some kind of endurance exercise. I'm thinking off the top of my head, burpees, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to PR a squat. You are going to hurt yourself. And here's why. It's because you're confusing your body. So what Chris was getting at there from a more physiological standpoint is when you go and you do yoga all the time, again, that's great. I've seen a ton of people that have gone through a rehab program with me do yoga at the same time, and it has been tremendous in helping open them up and get them back to mobility. So don't get me wrong here. But what it is doing is if you go and you do yoga for a year, your body is going to adapt to the stresses you put on it. So for the same reason that our cores are turning off and our butts are turning off, and we're using all hip flexors and low back muscles to hold us up while we're typing at the computer, is the exact same reason that people that are doing one type of exercise, one type of modality over time respond to the way that they do when they change it up. People that have been doing yoga for a long time, for the most part, are stretching, they're loosening, they're opening their bodies up. And if you're going to go lift a heavy load, you actually need a tight body. I think Chris Duffin right now, I don't want to put words in his mouth or anything, but he's pretty much done trying to go after the 1,000-pound reps. This is a professional power lifter. He's a power lifter anyways. And he's not out there doing yoga before he starts up his lifts. He's doing warm-up reps, and he's tightening his hamstrings. He's tightening his body, because your body has to be tuned for that. I see basketball players that will come into me and they'll be complaining about tight hamstrings, and I'm like, good. keep your hamstrings tight. You got to jump all the time. Why would I loosen up your hamstrings? I would, no pun intended, hamstring you on the court if I decided to just loosen up that one bit of anatomy that's there to help spring load you. Now, we can help with the recovery of that so it doesn't feel tight all the time, so it doesn't feel uncomfortable all the time. But the point that I'm getting at is if you want to train your body up to do a certain thing, say you're an athlete and you want to train your body up to move a certain direction or move a certain way, then you need to tune your body to do so. You can't just be relying on lift as heavy as I can and hope that that'll make me just as strong as humanly possible. You can't, if you feel tight all the time and you want to be looser, you can't just rely on yoga and trying to be loose all the time. You have to find that balance to where you're going to be able to accomplish the tasks that you want to efficiently. And I know that's a lot for people to have to go in and think about and try to adapt for themselves. And quite frankly, I don't think many people can do that themselves. That's where yourself and I come in. But, you know, the reality of the situation is that most people are at home right now thinking that, oh, let me follow a traditional model of burn myself out and then do a bunch of heavy presses. And a lot of those people are going to get hurt because of that. So again, to come full circle on this, my point is don't confuse your body. If you know you're going to do a task, if you know you're about to go do jumps, for instance, or if you know you're about to go do something that is power centric, heavy squats, heavy bench press, do not sit there beforehand and try to loosen up, put a ball on, do a bunch of mobility exercises. Do those at the beginning of at your warm-up time, and then start slowly tuning your body up. Do lighter bench presses to get yourself warmed up for that max. Do lighter squats to get yourself warmed up. Really think about the neural drive that it takes to do all those movements. Really think about charging up the right muscles, being tight in the right areas, setting your lifter's wedge, if you know what I'm talking about, and doing that under a lighter stress. There you go, Jolly Green. Doing that under a lighter stress.
Big man problem.
And then trying it out on the heavier lifts. But don't sit there and just try to confuse the hell out of your body by doing loosening, and then getting into something that you need to actually be tight for.
Absolutely. You know, and that I would touch on something else that has to do with this subject, and that would be, you know, athletics, and something I touched on a little bit, and I think you're kind of talking about, we're in the same sandbox here, but diminished returns for athletics as well. You know, I mean, I've got, you know, if I get a youth athlete, my number one priority first is to just build some sagittal plane competency rather. And basically what we talked about, just as I would train anybody else, you kind of got to earn your stripes. Before I'm going to load you to do like crazy box jumps or do weighted jumps or jumping against resistance. And if you can't even squat your body weight, man, you really don't have any business doing anything like that, you know? So, you know, earning those kind of things at first, but then there's a certain point in all strength training that, you know, that starts to lock your body down. I think, you know, it was Bill Hartman and Mike Robertson. Bill Hartman, of course, we talk about a lot, was saying, you know, they were kind of discussing this issue of when is that a diminished return? And it's very simple. You know, once your sport, basically your mobility, your ability to play your sport starts to diminish because of your strength, that's it. You got to back off. You know, so everybody's out here thinking, I'll just get stronger, faster. You know, that's great for sports like football and stuff like that. Like you could just unlimited power if you play D line, because you're not really moving that dynamically so far as you have. You know, you're not sprinting. Now I'm eating my own words, but you're not moving like a running back or a wide receiver is what I'm getting at, or somebody playing basketball or somebody like that. You have a very just straightforward, see if I can push the other man out of the way and get to the ball. But something like basketball or something like that, if you start to lock your athlete down because they're so strong, you know, or you've restricted certain motions in them through tightening up certain muscles because you're making them deadlift or making them go after monster PRs and stuff like that, well, then there's a point of a diminished return to their sport. And that should be the absolute line, not only for sports, but for everybody. I think that's kind of what we're getting at is once things start to negatively affect your health, you know, insofar as like everyday mobility, you know, I can't pick up a box because I'm so elongated and stretched out from yoga. I can't walk because I'm so stiff from powerlifting. You know, I think everything has a point of a diminished return is what I'm getting at. I keep saying that, but And then there needs to be a system in place. You know, Gray Cook really champions the FMS, and people can blow holes in it all day long. But I think what he started, and which people like me and you need to continue to carry that torch, is just checking in on our bodies. Whether it's an FMS or another screen or something like that, it's a case for, and he's the first person to really plant that flag, internationally, of what are we doing? We got to check in on our athletes. We got to check in on our people. Like, we're just basically like making people do, day 38 exercise on day 1. And you don't even know their shoulder doesn't work. Like, how irresponsible is that? And if that's, doing an FMS or putting somebody on a table and checking their internal, external rotation, their abduction, hip abduction, adduction before you get started, that's what needs to happen. Because if this guy's got a shoulder that doesn't go overhead, and to get overhead mobility, they got to go way back into their spine, and you sit there and load them with a PR weight on day 1 with that person. And I think that's really what his main point was, and really what we need to continue to do as an exercise and fitness community and rehabilitation community is just keep checking in on people, keep checking in on their mobility, keep checking in. Is this stuff really working? Yeah, I'm stronger, but now this hurts all the time.
Yeah.
Those are
just for people to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just for people to understand what Chris is talking about, in case I missed it, the FMS is just a movement screen. So basically, the way that Gray Cook describes it is you check in somebody's movement vitals. An example he likes to give all the time is, you would never get on an airplane where you didn't know that the pilot and everybody on board was going through an extensive checklist of things that were hard and fast rules. This needs to be checked, and it needs to be checked on the box as well to make sure that we're going to lift off safely and nobody's going to crash. Now, you going and exercising is a little bit less of a deadly move than going onto an airplane that hasn't done a checklist run. But it is the same concept in that you are going and you are about to stress a system and you have no idea how it moves. And if you're talking about the thing that you get when you go get your physical, where somebody pushes on your arms here, pushes on your arms here, as you touch your toes, it's not enough. I'm just, in my expert opinion, it's not enough. You have to look at what the demands are of what your task is. So even if you're not an athlete, if you're listening to this and you just want to live daily life without pain, or you want to go back and exercise without pain, you have to look at the demands, the movement demands of that, and then check your ability to do that and fill the gaps. It's not saying don't go do it. It's saying figure out how we can help you do it, or at the very least, figure out how you can earn the right to do it. An example I see all the time, it frustrates the living crap out of me, is watching people that have just had an ACL repair like 10 weeks ago be standing on an unstable surface doing some kind of single leg, all the way over here, holding onto a band and trying to keep themselves upright. It's just a recipe for disaster, but somebody thinks that they're trying to strengthen you, and the real thing that they're doing is putting you in an incredible amount of danger. And really what we're trying to tell you is that you want to be able to earn the right to do that stuff. But if you don't know whether you can do it or not, then, how do you think you're going to get through an exercise program without feeling pain? You're going to get lucky if anything, or you have a tremendous trainer that is paying attention to you the whole time, which I imagine is not as easy to do right now with basically every gym in America locked down. So, the only way that you're going to get that is through virtual training, which I'm a huge advocate of. But at the same time, the hundreds and thousands of people that aren't getting that training, that aren't getting somebody to watch them earn those movements, that aren't getting somebody to check on those movements, should at the very least be able to walk into a movement program and throw a piece of paper down on the table that says, here are the things that I can and can't do. Just like you would if you're going into the doctor's office and they took your blood pressure, your heart rate, your blood sugar, whatever else they check with those visits, they're trying to check your vitals. So if you're about to go live your life in public, you need to be healthy. But if you're about to go live your life and do some exercises and be mobile, and you haven't been for a while, or you're changing things up, or maybe you're not changing things up and you're just increasing the load, you damn well better know how well you can do that stuff, because you are asking to get hurt if you're not. You're playing with fire.